Till now, what we have done, we have discussed about cost of debt and cost of equity, right? We have learned about cost of debt and cost of equity, right? For cost of debt, we have seen the formula, that is interest into 1 minus tax. And with this formula, we have learned that how we can calculate the cost of debt, right? Similarly, we have learned how to calculate cost of equity. And we have used CAPM model, that is capital asset pricing model. And we have used this formula, that is risk-free return plus RM minus RF into beta, right? This formula we have learned, and with the help of this formula, we have calculated that how to calculate cost of equity, right? We have learned how to calculate cost of equity, right? You are running a business, right? You are running a business where you require, let's suppose, 100 crore rupees, right? You are running a company where you require 100 crore rupees, or where you have raised 100 crore rupees, right? Now, what are the modes of financing? One is equity, and second is debt, right? By issuing equity shares or by issuing debt securities, you can raise the money from market, right? Let's suppose what you have done, you have raised 60 crore rupees by issuing equity shares, and remaining 40 crore you have raised by issuing debt security, right? Now we have applied CAM model and we have calculated the cost of equity. I am just assuming the number here, right? We have applied CAM model and we found that cost of equity is 10%, right? And here debt cost is, let us assume 8%, right? So what you have to do in this case, you have to pay dividend, and in this case you have to pay interest, right? So we have already considered benefit when we have calculated 8%. ये formula लगा के हमने क्या किया? We have calculated cost of debt, that's 8%, and we have calculated cost of equity, that is 10%. Now, individually, we know that how we calculate cost of equity and cost of debt, right? We have seen the formula, and by applying these formula, individually, we can calculate cost of equity and cost of debt. But if I ask you that what is the overall cost of capital, is it possible to calculate overall cost? I'm asking you very simple question. If I ask you to calculate overall cost of capital, right? Here we have learned how to calculate cost of equity and how to calculate cost of debt. But if I ask you that what is going to be the overall cost of it, right? What is going to be the overall cost of capital? Because combination of that and equity is going to be a total capital. So here the total capital is of rupees 100 crore. Now here we have to learn that how you calculate the overall cost of capital, right? Now there is a method to calculate overall cost of capital that is known as weighted average cost of capital, right? On the basis of weights, what we'll be doing, we will be calculating the overall cost of capital for company. Total cost कितनी कंपनी को पड़ रही है, उसी बेसिस पे कंपनी डिसाइड करती है कि कंपनी को अपना कैपिटल स्ट्रक्चर से रखना है, right? The lower will be the cost, higher will be the profit, right? So when investors they invest into any company, ना they check cost of capital also, right? कि अगर cost of capital बहुत ज़्यादा है, फिर profit company के कम हो जाएंगे, because they have to pay lots of interest, they have to pay lots of dividend to the shareholders, right? So what investors do, they check overall cost of capital also, right? When you will be investing your money, definitely you will be checking the cost of capital also. Now, how we can calculate the cost of capital? You just have to follow my instructions, right? Right now, just focus here. There's a format, the format which I will be using, I'm writing down here. So this format I will be using. First, I will be writing down the security here. So company has issued equity and also debt, right? Now, if I write down the amount here, so amount of equity is 60 crores and amount of debt is 40 crores, right? And total capital is of 100 crore rupees, right? Now, if I write down the cost here, so cost of equity is 10% and cost of debt is 8%, right? Now, after that, the next step is going to be that we have to calculate weight, right? We have to calculate the weight. How I can calculate the weight, right? So formula for calculation of weight is, to calculate the weight, here I'm writing down the formula. Formula for calculation of weight is equity capital divided by total capital. If you want to find out weight of equity, right? If you want to find out weight of debt, so here it is going to be debt capital divided by total capital, right? What is the equity capital here? Equity capital is of 60 crore rupees, right? And what is the total capital? 100 crore. So what is going to be the weight of? It is going to be 60%, or I can write 0.6, right? So I will write down here 0.6. right? So weight of equity is 0.6, right? If I talk about weight of debt, so debt capital is of 40 crore rupees and total capital is of 100 crore. So what is going to be the weight of debt? It is going to be 0.4. 0.4. It is going to be 0.4. Now, if I want to calculate overall cost of capital, so what I will be doing, I will be using the formula. What is the formula to calculate weighted average cost of capital or overall cost of capital? Formula is cost into weight, right? This is the formula. This concept is very easy, right? If you understand the steps now, this concept is very easy. So formula is cost into weight, right? This is the formula, cost into weight. Now, what is the cost here? Cost is 10% and weight of equity is 0.6. So if I multiply 10% with 0.6, so here I will be getting the answer 6%, right? Now, if I talk about debt, so what is the cost of debt? It is 8% and weight of debt is 0.4. So 8% into 0.4 if I do, so it is going to be 3.2%. So if you see what is the overall cost of capital, overall cost of capital is 9.2%. This is the overall cost of capital. Am I clear? So this overall cost of capital, which company is spending towards their capital, right? This much cost company is bearing towards their capital, right? This is what a weighted average cost of capital. Now, what is the importance of weighted average cost of capital? Here I discuss. You know, weighted average cost of capital is also known as discounting rate. It is also known as discounting rate, right? Weighted average cost of capital is also known as discounting rate. And when we will be discussing the further chapter, right? I will be start capital budgeting after this chapter, right? How to decide which project you have to start or how to decide which product you should start in your company, right? How to find out the future cost of employees, right? Whatever compensation company is going to pay to their employees, how to find out the future cost. We will be learning these things in chapter capital busting, right? In this chapter, we will be learning all these concepts, right? Now, whenever we will be learning this chapter, now, there we will be using discounting rate every time. Every time I will be using the discounting rate and how we can derive the discounting rate with help of weighted average cost of capital. This is also known as discounting rate, and WAC is one of the most important concept. And it is one of the most important concept because I will be using this concept every time. Every time I will be using this concept. Is this concept is clear? I will be taking more examples, so you will be getting more clarity. In Excel, I will be taking the example. If you see here, if I frame an example here, right? So just focus, and after that, we will solve lots of cases. Here I am framing simple example. Example number 1. Let's suppose company is raised money by issuing equity shares. Total value of equity is, let's suppose, 100 crore, and total value of debt is, let's suppose here, 200 crore. Right. Now I am writing down the cost of equity and cost of debt here. Let's suppose cost of debt is 12%. Right. Cost of debt is how much? It is 12%. Right. And let's suppose as per CAPM method, cost of equity is, we are assuming cost of equity is 14%. Right. Cost of equity is how much? It is 14%. And tax rate is 30%. That is how much? It is 30%. Right. Now here what we have to do, we have to calculate overall cost of capital, that is weighted average cost of capital. Now first we have to find out the cost of equity and cost of debt. So cost of equity is already given in the question, that is 14%, right? And cost debt is 12%. Now here debt rate is given 12%, but we have adjusted the tax benefit, right? We have not adjusted the tax benefit. If I'm giving you tax it separately, it means I have not adjusted the tax benefit. Now, if I want to find out the cost of debt, so what formula I will be using here? Simply, what formula I will be using here? We have discussed this formula: interest into 1 minus tax rate. Absolutely correct. Right? This formula I will be using to calculate cost of debt. Right? So here I will apply this formula. So cost of debt is 12%. Right? Then multiply, open up the bracket, 1 minus tax rate. Tax rate is given here 30%. And if I close the bracket here, so I will be getting answer, that is 8.4%. This is the answer, right? 8.4% is the final cost of debt, right? So we have to take after tax cost of debt, right? What we have to do, we have to after cost of debt. Is it clear? That is 8.4%. Now here I want to find out weighted average cost of capital. So I will use the same structure: security is equity, and debt, right? Then I will be writing down the amount here. Amount is 100 crore and 200 crore. And what is the total amount? Total amount is 300 crore. Total capital is of 300 crore, right? Now after that, what I'm doing, I will be taking the cost here. So cost of equity is 14% and cost of debt is 8.4%, right? After that, if you see, now I will be calculating the weight. So how I can calculate the weight? It is going to be equity capital divided by total capital. So what is the weight of equity capital? It is 0.33, right? What is going to be the weight of debt? Debt capital divided by total capital. Debt capital divided by total capital. So it is 0.67, right? Now, if I want to calculate, so what formula you will be using? I will be using cost into weight. Right? This is the formula which I have to use to calculate weighted average cost of capital. So simply now I have to multiply these values, 14% into 0.33 and 0.56, right? And I will convert these values into percentage. So here now I have to do the total of these two values and I will be able to calculate the overall cost of capital, that is 10.27%, right? So this is how what we have to do. We have to calculate the weighted average cost of capital. Interest rate is 5%. Tax rate is given 25%. Then risk-free rate of return is 2%. Required rate of return is 12%. Stock price is $0.5. And share outstanding is given here 2,500. Right now, here if I write down that company has issued equity and company has issued debt, right? What is the total amount of debt? Total amount of debt is $250. Right? Total amount of debt is $250. If I want to find out value of equity, so how I will be finding out the value of equity? It is going to be total shares outstanding into stock price, right? Into stock price. This is how I can calculate the value of equity. Are you able to understand how to calculate value of equity? Simply share outstanding to stock price, right? This is how I can calculate the value of equity. Hopefully you are able to understand, right? Now, if I calculate the total, so what is the total capital here? Total capital is of $1,500, right? Now, cost of debt, if I want to calculate, so I will be using this formula, that is interest into 1 minus T, right? I will be using this formula. So what is the interest rate? Interest rate is 5%. Multiply 1 minus tax rate. So that is going to be 3.75%, right? What is going to be the cost of equity? So RF plus RM minus RF into beta, right? This formula I have to use to calculate cost of equity. So what is the risk-free rate? Risk-free rate is 2%. Plus what is the return from market or return RM is 12% here, minus risk-free rate is 2%. Then close the bracket and multiply this beta. Beta is 1.4. So here I have calculated cost, that is 16%. For equity is how much? 16%. Now I have to calculate the weight. So weight of equity divided by total capital. So it is here 0.833. Then weight of debt divided by total capital is 0.17. Right? It is 0.17 here. Then if I want to calculate the Waac, so simply what I will be doing, I will be taking here cost into amount. So amount is 1250, right? Not amount, sorry. Here cost into weight, right? And same I will copy here. And if you see what is the total? Total is 13.96%. This is how you have to calculate the weighted average cost capital. So overall cost of capital is how much? It is 13.96%. Is it clear? This is how you have to calculate the Waac.